With a voice so pure it seemed to come from heaven itself, Karen Carpenter defined an era. Her songs, Close to You, We've Only Just Begun, sold over 100 million records and made her the angelic face of American pop perfection. But behind that flawless harmony was a silence darker than fame could ever hide. While the world adored her, Karen was quietly waging war against her own body. A battle fueled by pressure, perfection, and a desperate hunger to be loved. How did a woman so loved by millions die completely alone at just 32 years old? What secret illness destroyed the most beautiful voice of the 1,970 seconds? And why did no one stop it? This video reveals the full, never-before-told truth behind Karen Carpenter's rise, her hidden pain, and the tragic silence that ended her song forever. Long before the world knew her as the angel with the velvet voice, Karen Carpenter was a shy girl in a loud house. A home where music filled every corner, but affection rarely did. Born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1950, Karen grew up under the shadow of a family hierarchy she could never quite climb. Her mother, Agnes, was proud, proper, and unwavering in her devotion to Richard, the prodigy son who could make the piano sing. Karen, meanwhile, was the quiet rhythm behind him, the girl who banged on drums to be heard in a household that only celebrated melody. The imbalance was subtle but brutal. Every compliment to Richard came wrapped in silence for Karen. When she tried to speak up, she was told she was too sensitive. When she gained weight, the teasing began. Lighthearted to them, but heavy to her. In high school, classmates mocked her as chubby, unaware that every joke left a small fracture in her self-worth. Music became her rebellion. Behind the drums, she could control the beat, her own heartbeat, in a world that refused to slow down for her. Yet even as the Carpenters began to form, that longing to be seen never left her. Each applause from the audience felt like a temporary cure for a wound that never healed. Inside the Carpenter home, success didn't shift the balance. Agnes still worried about Richard's future, his career, his image, while Karen's triumphs were treated like pleasant side notes to her brother's genius. It was the kind of love that came with conditions. Be perfect. Be polite. Be small. So she tried. She began to eat less, smile more, and sing softer, as if shrinking herself would finally make someone notice. What started as discipline became obsession. What began as control became captivity. By the time the world saw her glowing under stage lights, Karen Carpenter was already vanishing. Not just in body, but in spirit. She was the picture of grace America adored, but inside, she was a daughter, still waiting for her mother's eyes to meet hers. When the Carpenters stepped into the American spotlight in 1969, they didn't just sing. They soothed. Their sound was clean, flawless, impossibly gentle in a decade roaring with rebellion. While the world worshipped Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin, Karen Carpenter sang about love, hope, and tenderness. She became the voice people turned to when everything else felt too loud. Her duet with Richard was magic. They Long to Be Close to You spent 4 weeks at #1, followed by We've Only Just Begun, a wedding anthem so perfect it played in thousands of ceremonies across America. In just 6 years, the Carpenters released 10 hit albums, earned 3 Grammy Awards, and sold over 100 million records. They toured the world, performing in royal halls and neon-lit casinos. On stage, Karen's voice was crystalline, flawless even through exhaustion. Behind the drums, she was thunder and silk combined, defying every image of a proper woman in pop music. Yet fame had its own choreography. Every smile rehearsed, every curve monitored, every headline dissected. Reporters adored her angelic image, but fixated on her body. Magazine spreads referred to her as the sweet girl next door, but producers whispered that she looked a little heavy on camera. The world that celebrated her voice began to dissect her reflection. So Karen adapted. She stepped away from the drums, replaced by male session players, because executives believed it looked more graceful. She was handed a microphone and told to stand still, smile more, and sing beautifully. What the audience saw as elegance was, for her, submission. A quiet surrender of identity in exchange for applause. As the spotlight grew, her plate grew emptier. Backstage, friends noticed she barely ate, pushing lettuce leaves around her plate while insisting she was fine. When fans wrote to say, "You look amazing," "What's your secret?" she took it as proof that smaller was better, that vanishing was victory. Richard, battling his own addiction to sedatives, didn't see how far she'd slipped. Management avoided the topic. Perfection was good for business. Karen's daily routine turned clinical. Weighing herself several times a day, tracking every calorie, every ounce. A single pound gain could ruin her mood for hours. When her weight dropped below 90 pounds, 41 kilograms, she began layering her clothes to hide it. Not for fashion, but to keep the world from knowing how close she was to disappearing. The applause never stopped, but neither did the hunger. Not for food, but for peace. During a tour in Las Vegas, she fainted mid-show, regained consciousness, and finished the performance as if nothing had happened. The crowd saw only grace. No one noticed the trembling hands that could barely hold the mic. By 1975, the Carpenters had everything success could offer. Awards, sold-out tours, global fame. But Karen had lost the one thing fame couldn't buy back: herself. She'd traded the drums, her favorite escape, for a fragile image she couldn't sustain. Every mirror became an enemy. Every flashbulb, a judgment. Her mother still praised Richard's achievements more than her own, reinforcing the wound that never healed. The industry called her perfect, but perfection had become a cage. Karen wasn't living inside her success anymore. She was trapped inside it. And yet, she never stopped smiling. On talk shows, she laughed easily, her soft voice masking exhaustion. She thanked the audience, the crew, her brother. Everyone but herself. Off camera, she confided to friends that she felt like a hollow version of who she used to be. What no one realized was that beneath the flawless gowns and golden lights, Karen Carpenter was slowly fading. Not from fame, but from the constant battle to stay worthy of it. She had conquered every chart, yet couldn't conquer the voice inside whispering, "You're still not enough." The standing ovations grew louder. And Karen, ever the perfectionist, bowed a little deeper each time, unaware that every applause was another nail in the coffin of her own making. By 1980, Karen Carpenter had everything the world could envy. Fame, fortune, and a voice that still sounded like sunlight through stained glass. But at 29, she was haunted by one thought: I've done everything but be loved. The concerts were endless, the applause deafening, yet the nights were silent. So when Thomas James Burris walked into her life, charming, confident, the embodiment of security, she believed she had finally found her missing harmony. Thomas was a real estate developer, older, well-dressed, and full of promises. Within 2 months, he proposed. Her friends were stunned, her brother cautious, but Karen, exhausted from years of perfectionism, clung to the fantasy. "He loves me for me," she told them. The wedding was lavish, almost cinematic. White roses, champagne, a smile that looked rehearsed. She wore a gown cinched tightly at the waist to hide how dangerously thin she'd become, weighing barely 90 pounds. Cameras flashed, capturing the fairy tale. But behind every photograph was a secret already cracking. Just days before the ceremony, Karen discovered something that shattered her illusion. Thomas had undergone a vasectomy years earlier. He couldn't have children. He hadn't told her. For a woman whose deepest longing was to build the family she never truly felt part of, the betrayal was devastating. She confided to friends that she wanted to cancel the wedding, but her mother urged her to go through with it. The invitations were out, the press already watching. And so, Karen walked down the aisle, not toward love, but toward another kind of prison. The marriage unraveled almost immediately. Thomas began withdrawing. Emotionally, financially, and cruelly. He spent her money freely, driving luxury cars and signing checks from her accounts without permission. When Karen confronted him, he reportedly sneered, "No man wants to come home to a skeleton." Whether those were his exact words or just the echo of what she already believed, the damage was the same. Friends recall her phone calls, whispered confessions between tears. She'd apologize for being difficult, for not looking right. She still defended him publicly, convinced that if she were thinner, quieter, more obedient, he'd love her again. But love wasn't the problem. Control was. By late 1981, Karen's weight had plummeted below 85 pounds, 38 kilograms. She often fainted, yet insisted on making appearances. In public, she smiled through the pain, as if the illusion of happiness could keep her alive. But her body was collapsing under years of starvation, laxatives, and the quiet use of ipecac syrup, a drug meant to induce vomiting, now poisoning her heart with every dose. In desperation, she sought help. She contacted Dr. Stephen Levenkron, a psychotherapist specializing in eating disorders, and checked into treatment in New York. For the first time, she admitted to the illness by name, "I'm anorexic." It was a moment of terrifying honesty, but years too late. Her marriage, meanwhile, had deteriorated into silence. Thomas had left, taking her trust, and much of her money, with him. In her therapy sessions, Karen spoke about her mother's perfectionism, her loneliness, her need to be seen. "When people stop clapping," she said softly, "I stop existing." "Doctor, I am." Levenkron later told friends that he'd never seen a patient so fragile, so desperate to please, even in her own recovery. The separation became official in 1982. She changed her legal documents back to Karen Carpenter, as if trying to reclaim the self she'd lost. But the battle between her body and her will raged on. She tried eating again, regaining a few pounds, but her heart had already been weakened beyond repair by years of malnutrition and toxic substances. The fairy tale had become tragedy. The love she thought would heal her only deepened the wound. She had entered marriage seeking refuge from loneliness, and found instead the final trigger of her downfall. By the end of that year, Karen was living back in her parents' home in California, sleeping in the same room where she once dreamed of stardom. Her gold records still gleamed on the walls, but she barely looked at them anymore. Somewhere between fame and heartbreak, she had lost her own reflection. And though the world still heard her voice echoing on the radio, pure, eternal, Karen Carpenter herself was fading fast, caught in the tragic silence between the applause and the ache of being unseen. The final act of Karen Carpenter's story didn't begin with death. It began with hope. In the fall of 1982, after years of denial and silence, Karen finally decided to fight back. She checked into treatment under the care of psychotherapist Dr. DeBlues, Stephen Levenkron in New York. For the first time, she said the word she had once feared, "I have anorexia." It was both confession and surrender. At first, there were signs of recovery. She started to eat again, gaining weight slowly. She wrote to friends that she was feeling stronger and excited to live normally. She even called Richard, telling him she wanted to make music again. But what no one could see, not even her doctors, was that her body had already been pushed beyond its limits. Years of self-starvation, laxatives, and the long-term abuse of ipecac syrup had ravaged her heart. Ipecac, a medicine meant to induce vomiting, contains emetine, a compound so toxic it can cause irreversible cardiac damage. The autopsy would later list her cause of death as emetine cardiotoxicity due to or as a consequence of anorexia nervosa. It was a medical phrase too cold for what it truly meant. Her heart had literally been poisoned by her attempt to be perfect. In therapy, Karen told Levincron that she wanted to be strong enough to be loved again. She admitted she feared gaining weight more than she feared dying. When he asked why, she said softly, "Because if I get fat, no one will listen." The words stunned him. Not because of their logic, but because of their innocence. To Karen, love and approval had always been measured in applause, in mirror reflections, in numbers on a scale. By January 1983, she seemed outwardly better. She'd gained nearly 30 pounds, now weighing around 110 pounds. But the rapid gain had strained her weakened heart. She returned to California, eager to rebuild her life. And even more determined to prove she was fine, she began making calls about a comeback tour, planning new songs. She told friends she wanted to move out of her parents' house, buy a small home by the ocean. For the first time in years, she sounded happy. But healing the body is not the same as healing the damage inside it. The weight came back faster than her organs could handle. On the morning of the 4th of February 1983, Agnes Carpenter heard a soft thud from Karen's bedroom. When she entered, she found her daughter collapsed on the floor of the walk-in closet. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Karen was rushed to Downey Community Hospital, where doctors tried to revive her. Her pulse was almost non-existent, about 6 beats per minute. At 9:51 a.m., they declared her dead. She was 32 years old. The medical report described a distended bowel, cachexia, and extreme cardiac toxicity. Her blood sugar at death measured an astonishing 1,110 mg/dl, over 10 times the normal range. The heart that had kept perfect rhythm for millions had stopped beating under the weight of its own exhaustion. The news broke like a thunderclap. Headlines read, "Voice of an Angel Dies of Anorexia." For the first time, many Americans even heard the term anorexia nervosa. In 1983, it was not a word people associated with real danger. But Karen Carpenter's death changed that overnight. Newspapers began running features on eating disorders. Schools started awareness programs. Doctors began classifying anorexia as a mental illness rather than a lifestyle choice. Her death, horrific as it was, forced the world to finally listen to the silent epidemic she had carried alone. At her funeral, Richard wept as "We've Only Just Begun" played through the church. Friends remembered her as gentle, meticulous, endlessly kind. Fans left flowers, letters, and records outside the Carpenter family home. On the surface, it was a tribute to her music. But for many, it was an apology. The culture that had demanded her perfection now mourned what it had destroyed. Yet even in death, Karen refused to vanish. Her songs resurfaced on radio charts, her album surged in sales again, and her voice, haunting and eternal, became the symbol of a new awareness. Rolling Stone later placed her among the 100 greatest singers of all time. She had wanted to be heard. And finally, the world was listening. But her story was never just about fame, or beauty, or even illness. It was about the unseen violence of expectation. The way the world tells women to disappear until they fit. Karen Carpenter's tragedy wasn't that she was weak. It was that she was too obedient to a culture that mistook fragility for grace. In the decades since, her legacy has evolved from sorrow to warning. Artists like Adele and Lady Gaga have cited her as both inspiration and cautionary tale. Every new discussion on body image, perfection, and fame carries her shadow. She was the canary in the coal mine, singing beautifully until the silence consumed her. And yet, when her voice plays today, Rainy Days and Mondays, Superstar, Close to You, it doesn't sound tragic. It sounds eternal. As if somewhere beyond all the noise and pressure, Karen Carpenter finally found the one thing she had always been searching for: peace. Her story ends not with applause, but with understanding. A quiet reminder that sometimes the most dangerous battles are the ones fought in silence. And through her silence, the world finally learned to listen.